I think the problem with Israeli strategy, whether it's against Hamas or against Hezbollah, is that Israeli leaders tend to see their fundamental problem as these organizations. And it is true that these organizations use violence, and including violence against civilians, obviously, with what Hamas did on October 7th, which was a reprehensible targeting of civilians. But the problem is that if you think Hamas is the problem, how do you explain the fact that Palestinians have been fighting against Israel and against Zionism for close to 100 years, whereas Hamas was only created in 1987? There's a much deeper underlying grievance here, which goes much, much deeper than Hamas. And if you wanted to try to eliminate or even just weaken Hamas, fundamentally you need to deal with that grievance. There are plenty of Palestinians who don't like Hamas for a whole range of reasons. They're not Islamists. They don't want to live under Islamist rule. They don't like the fact that Hamas has done these targeting of civilians. But all the Palestinians want to live in freedom. And so if Israel offers no possibility of a path for Palestinians to live in freedom and dignity, then Israel has no chance whatsoever of defeating or even really meaningfully weaken Hamas, because it's not providing or creating any alternative to Hamas. The thing that would be most likely to create an alternative to Hamas that could weaken Hamas would be if there were other pathways, other strategies by which other groups could make meaningful progress towards ending a situation in which Palestinians lack the most basic freedoms. But the Israeli government is fundamentally opposed to that. And so what Israel ends up doing is it bombs and bombs and bombs, and sure, it kills Hamas fighters. It probably destroys a lot of Hamas weaponry. But we've seen again and again and again that Hamas can create and find new weapons. Israel has been bombing Gaza again and again and again certainly since 2005, when it withdrew its soldiers and its settlers. And what you find over time is, despite this really, really brutal blockade and these brutal bombings, every time there's a new war, Hamas has rockets that can go even further than it could in the last war, and that Hamas has more fighters than it did the last time. And the reason is because even if you kill some Hamas fighters, Hamas recruits from families of people that Israel has killed. Every time you kill civilians, and Israel has killed an astonishing number of civilians in this war, you are producing people who will want to go and fight you, because that is a human emotion. When you've seen your family members destroyed, killed, starved, that you want to fight back. And so even while Hamas loses fighters, Hamas has a huge bonanza of new potential fighters. When Israel invaded Lebanon in the early 1980s, it did so because it wanted to kick the PLO, Yasser Arafat's Palestine Liberation Organization, out of Lebanon, because Israel couldn't imagine anything more threatening, anything worse than Arafat and the PLO. They did succeed in ultimately forcing the PLO out of Lebanon, but in so doing, they laid the groundwork for Hezbollah, which emerged as an organization of Shias in Lebanon who were fighting Israel's occupation. This is the fundamental problem: is that you focus on one particular Palestinian, or in this case now Lebanese, organization as the root of the problem, and then in your effort to destroy it, you actually create the conditions for people who want to fight you even more, because you exacerbate the root cause of the problem, which is that people don't like to be occupied. People don't like to have their cities bombed. People don't like to have their family members killed. And when you do all those things in the pursuit of destroying one organization, even if you ultimately end up having some kind of tactical success against that organization, usually something else will emerge to fight against you, because the underlying grievance has become even greater. The United States found this when it went into Iraq. Couldn't imagine anything worse than Saddam Hussein in Iraq. It succeeded in overthrowing and killing Saddam Hussein, and then it found itself fighting against ISIS. And this is why I think Israel's strategies against Hezbollah, along with Hamas, in addition to massively violating international law, producing human rights abuses on a catastrophic scale, are just strategically incoherent, because you end up exacerbating the long-term fundamental problem you have, which is a political problem. It's not a military problem. The political problem you have is that you are occupying and bombing people who want to live in freedom. And unless you take that demand seriously, you're basically going to be running after your tail year after year after year.